Okay. All right. So it's titled as a Qualia-structure project and a search for the isomorphism between conscious experience and the structure of information. And outline-wise, I first briefly introduced the study of consciousness because of the audience nature. I will be brief about this. But the difference from the standard kind of consciousness research is that we are going to focus on the structure of qualia, which I'll go define later, and also information. And then I'll discuss what is a qualia structure and the information structure, and then how we can study a relationship between them. This is, in a sense, a bit of the advertisement or promotion talk for our recent grant called the Qualia-structure. And the reason why we are going to do this is that this one is kind of a two-step grant that if we are successful in this 2 years, then we can potentially move to the larger scale grant like Shingaku Jutsu Ryoiki in 2023. So the introduction. First, the problem of consciousness. Why we are interested in this? The reason is that this, I think, is one of the three fundamental mysteries in terms of the origin of the world, universe, life, and consciousness. And consciousness is, I think, most tangible, and but it's most unclear and controversial. And still, I think we can make a huge progress within my lifetime. And so the tentative definition of consciousness, by the way, I forgot to say that if you have any question, especially the clarification question, please interrupt me at any time. And also I'll try to make it short so that we can have some discussion at the end. So now coming back to the tentative definition of consciousness, I talk mainly about the contents of consciousness, that is at the given wakefulness level. Hopefully that everybody is awake right now, maybe except for Takehome, that qualia, feeling, and conscious perception that you are experiencing is something that we are interested in. And self-consciousness or team flow or whatever is within the category of this thing. And then the question of mystery becomes that am I experiencing the same world as others? That's a sort of the one of my most interesting questions in terms of consciousness. Like I've been interested in this question since I was a kid. Like, is my yellow the same as yours? But this kind of question is quite difficult, and normally neuroscientists motivated by this kind of question, but give up after becoming professional or after starting a PhD, because it's so fundamental, and the scientific approach to the qualia especially is just impossible. That's what other people say, philosophers especially. And qualia seem ineffable, meaning that you can't describe in words, and intrinsic, that is present in itself, but not related to anything else in the outside world. And the private, meaning it's only observable or experienceable from experiencer, and inapprehensible. It's just impossible to understand. This is what Dennett characterized qualia as. But I think all of these are just questionable at the best, and most likely to be wrong, and that's my position. So now, leaving aside of this difficulty of qualia, Francis Crick and Christoph Koch, my previous advisor, proposed that rather than stuck on this philosophical problem, we should just make empirical progress, which is the finding of a neural correlates of consciousness. And this program, it has been put forward since 1990s, and most powerfully exerted by fixing the stimulus in the outside world, and then changing the subjectivity or consciousness, like binocular rivalry and so on, and then observe the neural correlates that correlates only with the consciousness, but not the stimulus. And of course, this is one of the also quite a strong illusion called the emotion-induced blindness. There, the point is that constant physical inputs vary the qualia, whether you see or experience yellow dots or not. And then the question becomes, what is the MCC or brain mechanism that generates this disappearance, appearance of the yellow dots? And then the same kind of thing has been done in the binocular library, and the logothesis lab has already completed this kind of picture of 2000, before 2000. As you go from early visual areas to the higher level visual areas, you'll find more neurons that are correlated with the perceptual reports, not but the reports. Okay, this is a key point. So then by doing this continuously, can we expect a fundamental shift in understanding the consciousness? That's a question. And I would say that it's not. And one of the reasons is that strategically, because NCC approach always fix the stimulus or condition into one sense, and then try to categorize experience either seeing or not seeing, or seeing one like face or not, a house or something like that. It always reduces it into the binary response or criterion, and it's never characterizing the quality of experience itself. And we discussed at length with Alex Meyer recently in YouTube. So if you are interested, you can look at that. But how can then, if you admit this kind of our position, then the question becomes, how can we then quantify qualia using psychophysics or neuroscience method? And our idea is actually inspired from the collaboration with the mathematician. And the answer is basically characterizing the relationship among the qualia. And specifically, it's called Yoneda lemma, Japanese guy who invented this in category theory. So what it means is actually quite simple and very intuitive, and many people already do it, by intuition. So to understand whether this red here and also red here, let's say these are my red and this is Shin's red, and then if you ask the direct question whether my red is similar to Shin's red, it's just impossible philosophical question over, and then you are dead. But what I'm trying to say is that the characterizing the object through the relationship is still possible. So, and this has been done in other fields of the science, such as trying to study the meaning of the words, or ecological environment, or black hole and infinity in the mass. All of these, it's just difficult to characterize the object in itself in many, many ways. But by looking at the relationship with others, for example, my red and the Shin's red, are we actually saying that this is kind of similar to purple to the same degree, and kind of similar to the orange, and then almost the same as this one? Then, after converging evidence of this matrix of the structure of this, Qualia-structure, we can strongly believe that I and Shin are actually experiencing the red to an undeniable degree. And we can also define, detect this type of, colorblind people or color anomaly people and so on with this thing, of course. So that's one kind of hint. And our project becomes this, operationalized three-step project. One is to characterize the Qualia-structure. So using similarity, for example, of objects, and then we can use mathematical tools to understand the shape or structure of experience, and then to extract the information structure from brain state and structure. So to do that, we need to measure the brain structure activity, and then convert that into something like abstract information structure. The reason why we need this is that we know that many of the brain activity is not really directly correlated from the experience. So this abstraction stage is informed by many different kind of neuroscientific evidence, but also we are in particular interested in the integrated information theory. And then finally, we want to achieve this investigation of the structure correspondence. We characterize psychophysically Qualia-structure, and then informationally using integrated information, and then it should match up. Otherwise, what the theory is extracting is bogus. So that's the disprovable hypothesis that we are putting forward. Okay, so far, is there any question? I may not be able to chat box, but yeah, okay, no question so far. Okay, So for the summary is that despite its importance, consciousness research started taking shape only last 30 years, I would boldly say, especially in the neuroscientific approach. But it's questionable whether we can make progress further on the topic of the qualia itself. So with this project, we will focus on the qualia, but through the lens of the relationships. So that's the first part, okay? And then now the qualia structure. How are we actually going to do this? So just a little bit of the introspection of what I mean by structure. So for example, when you see Mona Lisa, then you have a particular sense of the faceness qualia. That's at least for my operational starting point. And then this faceness qualia seems to be characterized as a collection of the percepts that arise from spatial arrangement of the particular parts of the faces to form this, also a holistic kind of impression of the whole. And these kind of a hierarchical and simultaneous compositional kind of arrangement defines the face structure. And likewise, in the case of the color, one of the very peculiar thing about the color structure is that at one location in time, you can't experience two colors at the same time. Binocular rivalry of the color happens, but when you experience one color at that location, it's only that one. This is very different from other type of qualia, like pain and itch, or sound in different frequency, or orientation of the stimulus, or moving things. Many things can be superimposed, but the color cannot. Why is that? We don't know still, but there should be some kind of neuronal correlates for that. And yet, any one particular color has a particular simultaneous relations with unseen color at that location. For example, red, when it's there, it implies implicitly that this is kind of similar to yellow or purple than green thing over there. So that's a kind of the relationship with a possible counterfactual experience. And then the sound is also characterized through this kind of spiral thing, like C, sound of the C is similar to another C, one octave above or below, but different from D or B sound. And this kind of thing, if we can characterize a topological invariance of this qualia, that's sort of the goal of our first step goal of the qualia structure. And then empirically, we can do this kind of thing by first, as I mentioned, similarity structure, similarity experiment, but also using this attention manipulation as a way to perturb the qualia. And this is the dual task experiment to manipulate the attention. And I'll just go very quickly about this. But for example, if you're asked to do the central task here, LT discrimination, it's been known that you actually need to pay quite a bit of attention to the central task. So even if the left, the peripheral color discrimination task, red, green, or green, red, you can do it at 70% correct. If you try to do central task at the same time, it becomes a chance level. That's known. On the other hand, if you try to do the face gender discrimination, even if you are paying attention to the central task, you still also see phenomenally what's there in the face. And also you can automatically almost identify its identity and also gender as well. So this is another property of the face experience, which is not to depend on the attentional resource. And here's the summary of the many different kind of qualia structure with respect to the requirement of attention. And what we did in this recent experiment is, in addition to this, we also wanted to see whether the structure of qualia may change or collapse with or without attention. And here's what we did. So instead of presenting one object at a time, we presented two objects at a time, and then asked the subject to rate the similarity between the two. And we use 3 different kinds of stimuli: rotated letters, and rotated disks, and different kind of faces at the periphery. And it's always briefly presented and masked. So it's a very difficult question, stimulus to see itself, but we can still do the similarity rating. And here's the result, first result. So when we did the experiment with this similarity, so with the letters, if you present the letters on the left side or letter L's on the right side or left side, then many people can say, oh, they are similar. And they don't care about the rotation, actually. They just spontaneously say that, L's of the different rotation are similar. On the other hand, L versus T, that's, distinctively experienced. And the T to T is also similarly experienced. And the blue is similar, and the red is dissimilar, by the way. On the other hand, this rotated disk, they are actually rated as similar or dissimilar based on the orientation or rotation. And then the 90-degree difference is rated as different. And in the case of the faces, they spontaneously again rate the similarity between the female to female as similar, but the male to male as similar as well. This is male and this is female. Okay. And there was one guy who was actually rated similar to female, but different from male, but that's one constant finding that we find. Okay. And then when we did this with the dual task situation, here's what we find. So first of all, in the case of the letter, this letter case or the disk case, basically the structure is almost gone. And still the face cases, we still keep this, gender-based, categorization automatically. And then if you use a multidimensional scaling, we can find this as a with attention, we can see the clear, categorization, a cluster or structure of the L's and the T's here, but it becomes merging here without attention. And here, this is a rotated disk. This is also nice, shape of the rotation, but this one becomes completely, messed up here. And in the case of face, this, separated structure remains separate. So the summary of this strategy 1 is to use the withdrawal of the attention as a way to perturb qualia. Here, qualia is defined as the structural similarity relationship. And then we expect that that should accompany with the change in the brain response. And so if the informational structure algorithm is correct, then extracting the information structure from, let's say, FFA with or without attention, you should come up with 2 clusters of the face Qualia-structure-like thing, which corresponds to experience of the male and the female. On the other hand, with attention, that also won't change. However, but if you use a different kind of stimuli, like letters or rotated disk, not only Qualia-structure collapse, but also information structure gained from the brain response, and also any kind of algorithm should also collapse. And if not, this mechanism is incorrect. That's my first strategy. Okay, Xiaoming, do you have a question?
Yeah, very interesting approach now. Just a quick one. So basically, this is the relationship between or among all these different things, right? How much of it is kind of affected by, more higher level network, such as the semantic network, or something very low level, such as the, rudimentary visual features among these things? Because, our consciousness does not necessarily reflect the very high level or very low level things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a really great question. That's a really great question. And it's kind of, maybe I'll spend a little bit of time here because this is a critical issue. I initially, came up with this kind of similarity experiment from the inspiration of this, mathematician, suggestion. And then with the eyeglass of the consciousness researcher, when I looked at the similarity literature, which has done a lot since starting maybe 70s, it's very weird and interesting, but almost no consciousness researcher use a similarity rating. And there is several reasons for this, but as a result, something like your question, high level or low level stuff, that has been kind of investigated, but it's not to the extent that we want to actually understand. It's kind of fuzzy, like manipulation of the attention and so on is also confounded by the fact that stimulus is always presented on the display, and people are changing the location of stimulus to match with their feeling of similarity and so on. So in a sense, and we are finding that if we do that, it biases more cognitive or high level stuff. But if we present it briefly, then it's more tapping onto the low level or similarity at the level of the qualia and so on. So I would say that it's actually largely unknown, and I personally also don't know. And this is one of the active projects running in my lab.
I see. Thanks.
Yeah. And Shin also had a question along the line. Or Shin, do you want to say that, or should I read it out? Along the line of Sean's question, if you see a visual object and it's strongly associated with my many multisensory imageries, are they report the structure of qualia? Are they a part of structural qualia?
Yeah, it depends on your time. You can. We are trying to come up with a system to reply later, so you can briefly comment or you can move on. Either way.
Okay. So briefly, so this multi-dimensionality or multi-sensory effect is something that we are also interested in. And my personal hypothesis is that different modalities are felt differently. Like vision is vision and the audition is audition, because they can actually dissociate freely. And but local structure is very difficult to dissociate. Something that is tied really strongly is very difficult to dissociate. What I mean is that let's say, in the case of Stroop task, the red written in purple or blue is difficult to read it out as red, right? But as a sensation at the level of qualia, it's very probably not that difficult to rate the similarity of the color of the red as red, even if it's written in purple. But I don't know about this. The interference comes at the level of the motor level, and so on. This is again not. I don't know whether it's been investigated. So the short answer is that I don't know, and it's another kind of research that would be fruitful to address. Okay. All right. So now if you come back to this kind of approach, the next quick question or straightforward research program would be to combine the neural measurement, and that's straightforward thing to imagine, and that's what we are going to do. And then I already mentioned this, so I'll skip. And then we are also doing many different kind of projects right now, and I talked to this in the Color Korea Symposium, which Shin also participated a couple of months ago. So I'll skip this, but we are also using this Qualia-structure approach to see whether the foveal versus periphery. In that case, it was display, but now in collaboration with Japanese, Makiko Yamada, we are testing the similarity experience in the far periphery around here. And then do we see actually similar experiential structure or not? That's a question. And another one would be the nature of the distance. So that's another thing. That's one thing I want to dwell on. So as I mentioned in the beginning, consciousness research take a situation where same stimulus is perceived indifferently, right? For example, Shin's favorite is basically the illusion, and the illusion is called illusion because it dissociates from external observable world, objective world, which is believed, is perceived differently for each individual because the brain constructs the experience, right? And so same stimulus is not necessarily guarantee that it elicits the same or most similar response. If you think about adaptation, it's obvious. Like if you see a red and then another red, even if it's physically identical, it can be perceived as different. But if you admit that, it's going to be a huge problem for all these similarity experiment, because similarity experiment in general is assuming that similarity is a distance, and the distance between A and A has to be 0. So nature of the distance in the perceptual similarity has to be understood, and this is almost completely neglected. And this is one of the things that we realize that we need to address through the mathematical phenomenology approach. And I had 2 questions. Minoru, do you want to ask question directly, or should I go up until the end, maybe? How much time do we have, Mohammed?
We have 10 minutes.
Okay. Maybe then, should I go until the end?
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Later.
Okay. All right. Because I'll finish relatively quickly. And then, so the next one, step would be to measure information structure. And one hypothesis, for example, is that Qualia-structure is heavily dependent on the local or microscopic connectivity in the brain areas, such as B4 or B8. And so if we can measure their activity and also characterize the structure, anatomical structure over there, then we should be able to extract something related to the color structure. So as a most promising candidate for this extracting information structure, I would advocate that is integrated information theory. And I will not go into the detail for the rest of the paper, talk, but you can also look at my slides. That explains a little bit of the step there. And we are making some progress, and then also we are, we can now compute kind of shape of the experience in a rough manner, and this is just recently published a cross-computational paper between shape of the experience constructed or estimated from fly LFP recording, but that's a sort of a feasibility figure, right? And so the step that I outlined here is that first we are going to characterize or using many different kind of stimuli, characterize the shape of the experience first, and then measure the brain activity to estimate the shape of the structure, and then finally look at the structure correspondence between them. So for that purpose, that was actually the original purpose of why I started to learn category theory. But it turned out the Yoneda lemma is actually super interesting, and so I just wanted to introduce to you. But the category theory is a kind of a relatively new mathematical discipline, and that has been used to bridge the gap between many different kind of fields. Because it's super abstract, it can also point to sort of the, oh, this is the essence of this thing, and this is the essence of this thing. And if you connect these two things, then you can prove theorem on this side and then apply it on this side. And that has been done between quantum mechanics, geometry, algebra, topology, logic, and computation, and even language right now. It's called quantum linguistic. And also that's been becoming very, very promising. And then also phenomenology and information is the one basically that I'm proposing, and other people as well. So the two conclude take-home message and the future direction is that to crack the fundamental question on the physical basis of consciousness, I think it's necessary to characterize structure of qualia and then derive the structure information from neural data, and then finally link between them. Thank you, and I'll take questions. So should I take questions?
I think
from
you have
Minoru?
4 questions. Yeah, from
Thank
Professor
you.
Asada and Shin and Iris and Sean. So I don't know. Do you want to read the question, or Professor Asada can explain more?
Oh, no, it's okay. Yeah. So I have some just general questions. So please, if possible, if you have time.
Developmental perspective, some ASD people are supposed not to have a good perceived face at home and so on. Same or different? Yeah, so the question, of course, yeah.
Now, can you give idea for the audience about the question, because you did?
Oh yeah, so the Minoru is asking that, for example, developmental, disability or disorder in ASD implies that they are experiencing the face differently from us. And if so, then we can use this kind of approach to understand their experience. That's a question. And I think it's totally yes. And but two things to say. One is that so far, most of the psychophysics experiment, not really, using the type of the rich characterization of phenomenology that we are trying to do. And so, for example, ASD and healthy people are different in the face. The evidence comes from, for example, reaction time in terms of up down discrimination, or let's say memory of the face and things like that. But what we are advocating here is that through the really multiple and also very rich way to link or characterize one face with another by let's say similarity or preference or many kind of references, then we can probably better understand more about the phenomenology of the ASD people. So if there is a real difference, then I want to see it through this kind of approach that I'm taking. And the second is that if we do find such a phenomenological difference, then I would say yes, there should be corresponding brain difference and eventually informational difference. Fine, Minoru?
Yes.
Fine.
Yes, thank you. Thanks so much. Yeah. So
Okay.
therefore, the very similar structure, even though the appearance is different, but the structure is the same, right? Your answer is
no. If the appearance is different, then correspondingly, brain activity and states and the connectivity should be different.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
One more question is that when such a structure developed?
I don't know. We need to investigate.
Okay.
We need money to do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And then, And then Shin is asking whether quale itself is different between Chinese native English speakers when they see the same Chinese character. So this is also, I would say, again, an empirical question. Many of this, categorical perception or appearance of the stimulus, I think, has not really characterized the qualia through the relationships. So again, I actually don't know whether Chinese people and English people perceive two different characters as similar or different at the level of, for example, perceive the density of the strokes. That would be like more low-level texture thing, or at the level of the meaning, or at the level of shape or something like that. One interesting thing about our result is that when we asked people to rate the similarity of the L's and T's, they just disregarded the rotation. And because we knew that without attention, upright T versus L is highly discriminable, but rotated T and L's are not. We expected that there will be a category of the upright T and L's, but there was none actually. So when the things are presented at least periphery, even when you pay attention, it's the category of T and L's that comes to mind, and then you rate the appearance, similarity based on. Yeah, so something like this has to be analyzed.
Yeah, so that's fair answer. But just briefly, your idea of structure in qualia is a good approach, except that structure goes beyond qualia. Just semantic association has been studied in structure with a similar way. So that might be potentially a problem. I think Iris raised another question.
Yes, similarity changes by time, e.g. the stimulus presentation time. Yeah, so we actually did something like that. We are kind of doing. Also related to Shin's question, we hypothesized initially that, at least in my mind, similarity rating is only possible when you see the stimulus consciously. And so by using the backward masking, we gradually reduce the visibility. And when the visibility is going to 0, then it becomes impossible or random in terms of similarity rating. And it seems it's like that, but I'm not sure whether this is going to be true for all the stimulus or all the cases. Does that answer the question, Iris?
Yeah, well, I guess I think it's related to how the semantic influences. So what I was thinking, if you present the stimulus pretty long, and in that cases the criteria for judge the similarity might change, and in that case, yeah, I was suggesting that then the quality also changes in that cases.
Yeah, probably, but. One of the things that I want to avoid is that, or at least I want to focus on is at the moment of experience. So I don't want to go into the perceptual similarity rating or judgment across the saccade, because that contaminates between foveal and peripheral resolution and so on. So typically, most of our experiment is presenting the stimulus below 200 milliseconds and then with masking, and in general, after 100 milliseconds, roughly speaking, not only this kind of similarity rating, but also verbal response of what you saw becomes pretty much constant. You don't need more than 100 milliseconds to see more.
I see. Well, I see.
Okay.
Well, I'm just thinking. Well, I think we're running out of time. We can talk about this later. Yes. But I'm saying just briefly. I mean, I was thinking the idea is very interesting. So while in theory that you can apply this similarity rating, the structure, to other modality, auditory, sounds or tactile. So in that cases, I think the how long you present the stimulus would be kind of, well, if the rating changes by time, then that would be
exactly
issue.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I totally agree. Yeah. Some student in my lab wants to study music with this technique, and I'm not. Yeah. It's very difficult probably, but we can do it. And that.
Okay.
Well, our focus recently is the online based experiments. So we are basically doing all of this, in parallel with 500 to 1,000 people only rating part of the similarity rating, so that we can get the bigger picture of the similarity. And maybe with that, that's kind of things are possible. But tactile is going to be difficult.
I see. Okay.
Audition vision is possible.
More questions, but we should probably have to move on, right, Mohammed?
Yeah, maybe just we can get Megan's question. Megan, can you ask your question directly?
Yeah, that would probably be more efficient, and I'll go fast. So I think that the idea of quantifying the qualia space, like Rosenthal's qualia space, is a great one, and that similarity ratings are a great way to do that. So my question, though, is about whether what you're actually characterizing is the qualia space and not just information processing space. So for example, if you reduce if you remove attention from visual periphery, you're going to degrade the information processing capacity of the visual periphery even more than it already is. And therefore you're going to reduce or you're going to increase representational similarity, reduce discriminability between stimuli, and get exactly what you just found. So any kind of simple computer vision mechanism or system that has reducing attention adds noise would show exactly the same result. And I don't know that I would claim that any kind of simple computer vision system has qualia. And then secondly, there's also these empirical findings that reducing...
Wait. Maybe before going further, because I have a limited working memory, can I answer the first one?
Sure.
So the first, I think, your comment is right, that, as long as we are, using behavior reports, anybody can actually criticize this with, oh, you are mistaking the qualia with, information capacity. Fine, I take that. But what I'm saying is that, unlike discrimination or detection, the explanation of all these, clusters of the similarity rating is much more informative to characterize or to get to the closer to, what we are experiencing per se. Red and purple, we can actually discriminate this discriminatable, this may be discriminable, but it's not possible to define what this is on its own. So that's the way, we are just making a further steps towards closer to, Qualia-structure rather than just a simple discrimination.
Sure. And I think you're right to use similarity rating. So the last thing though that I wanted to just say is this empirical finding that withdrawing attention from the visual periphery actually results in a subjective experience of the stimuli being brighter, more discriminable. You have this subjective inflation, and it's worse under inattention. So this is a case where your subjective experience and your your informational processing capacity actually diverge. And so that would actually seem to be different from what you're predicting here, which is that there's a dimension maybe that you're not rating in your similarity ratings that is like kind of the detectability. I know you don't want binary detection, but which I agree with, but like the detectability or like salience or brightness or something that is not captured by this particular approach.
Maybe, yes, but
Okay.
I unfortunately, okay.
Sorry for interrupting. It's a great discussion, and I hope you both go to the Gather Town and start discuss this. Would be great. And right now, I think we need to go to Ryota. He's waiting for us.